Before we jump into this episode, I want to remind you that while Caitlin and Sophia are dietitians, we're not your dietitians. This means the information shared in the Food Freedom Fertility podcast is intended to entertain, educate, and inform. It is not a substitute for medical care. This information is not intended to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your doctor before making any changes.
Welcome to Connection Corner. This is where you leave a rating and review about this podcast, and we read it back to you on the very podcast that you rated and reviewed. So this one comes from Shannon KC. She says, best fertility podcast. Y'all are the best. I listen to a lot of podcasts as my husband and I have been walking through secondary infertility for the last 1.5 years, and I'm newly diagnosed with PCOS. With a new diagnosis, I've turned to millions of resources to try to turn this thing around, and your podcast is the best one. Your approach to things is so balanced and sustainable. I leave each episode feeling encouraged, spurred on to make small changes, and to be patient on the journey rather than broken about where we're at. Thank you for what you do. New loyal follower here. Y'all are so hilarious. I love your friendship, banter, and spiritual encouragement. Thank you. And that's a 5-star review. Looks like I got 5 stars in that one, and so did Jesus. So if you are just listening to this for the first time, I encourage you, go give us a rating and review, and maybe yours will be the one that we read on the next episode.
All right, welcome to another episode of Food, Freedom, and Fertility. We are here today, Sophia and Caitlin. It's been a couple episodes since she and I have been hanging out together, and we have another expert with us today. And we're going to dive into a topic that we haven't really specifically addressed here on the podcast, and that is managing diabetes in the context of preconception, so before you get pregnant, or in the context of fertility. And we have Nikki here with us today. She's a registered dietitian nutritionist. She also is a certified nutrition specialist with a master's degree in nutrition and functional medicine, helping women heal their relationship with food and body through a non-restrictive health at every size approach. She specializes in PCOS, prediabetes, thyroid issues, infertility, nutrition, and coming to us as a part of the diabetes digital team. Is that right, Nikki?
Yes. Yeah, I am.
So what's your role like there? Tell us more about Diabetes Digital.
Yeah, so Diabetes Digital, we launched back in, I think it was December of 2023. So a little bit less than 2 years now. And we are a virtual nutrition counseling platform run by dietitians. It was founded by dietitians. And we specialize with a lot of people that do have diabetes or prediabetes, some sort of insulin resistance, but also see people with different conditions like PCOS. I work with a lot of people that, have history of disordered eating or, are past that era, but sometimes when they do get that diabetes diagnosis, those disordered thoughts come back. So something that we also do is pretty much 90% of our patients pay $0 out of pocket. So we are fully insurance based, which is really, really awesome. And we do operate at a health at every size approach and really like to have a culturally inclusive lens as well. So really emphasizing that people can eat a lot of their cultural foods while still managing, diabetes and their other conditions as well.
That's awesome. When you say that people come and they may have kind of improved their relationship with food, maybe be in more of a recovery phase of having disordered eating patterns, is that typically them coming with a new type 2 diabetes diagnosis or type 1 diabetes? What is that? What's the kind of balance between patient load that you see more of?
For me, I don't work as much with people with type 1 diabetes, but we do have some other people that do. I see a lot of people that have either type 2 diabetes or prediabetes. And one thing that I've noticed a lot of the time is they'll, go to their doctor, get their labs back, be told that they're pre-diabetic or now they have diabetes, and they're just told to lose weight by exercise and eating healthy. And, they come to me and they're like, what do you think I've been trying to do my entire life?
Mm-hmm.
So they don't really have the tools to understand, what that means and how to eat in a way that can help support them, because they've dealt with like yo-yo dieting and weight cycling their whole life.
And there's so much weird information out there about, it seems to be like there's so much debate about what is healthy eating. What is the right way to eat to manage your blood sugar? Because you have people out there being like, it's the fats that are causing it. And so you need to be eating only like rice and fruit, and you need to be, there's even that one girl that's like a banana lady who's like
Oh my
11
gosh, yeah.
bananas. You know what I'm talking about? And then you have people that are like full keto carnivore diet. Like that is, insulin is the enemy. You need to be using as little insulin as possible, no carbs whatsoever. If you poop ever again, you have done it wrong. And then just the exhaustion. People try the one thing, it's unsustainable, it's exhausting. They do it for like 10 days, they feel terrible, see no results, and say, well, screw it, I'm just going to eat a pizza and start again tomorrow. And that becomes the ever repeating cycle.
Totally. It's so exhausting. If you were to go on Dr. Google and search like the best diet for diabetes, it's just like so much misinformation out there. And I even see that on like different groups online of people like sharing their meal, and it might have like a tiny little portion of rice and somebody's commenting like that's too many carbs. And so it's really hard to get just good information online without working with a registered dietitian that has like actually seen it in practice and can kind of remove that stigma and fear, because there's not like one perfect diet for everybody. And I do know just from practice that like removing an entire food group is not sustainable, and it's not what you need to do to be managing your diabetes.
It's not even helpful. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think too, like one thing that always comes to mind for me is even like it may not be healthy at this point. I think we often talk about generals, like it may not be good for you or may not be good for you, and we need to deal with you individually. Like even in my own life and managing my own insulin resistance and my own PCOS, what worked for me at 22 is different than what worked for me at 29. General principles, you can kind of like copy and paste some of those things, but dialing it in like day to day, even things change. And so really saying like, here are these very strict rules and you can only operate within them, and they work for everybody with diabetes or they work for everybody with prediabetes I mean, that's silly, but take it even to like a more granular level, thinking that that exact same thing will work for you for every pre-pregnancy may not be true either. And you especially see that with gestational diabetes. I've worked with so many people that have a history of gestational diabetes, and maybe we work on improving insulin resistance before their next pregnancy, and they don't have the diagnosis the next time around, or they didn't have it before or they did, and what works in this pregnancy is different than worked in that pregnancy. And so I think sometimes we need to give ourselves even more latitude to say like what works, not just one diet for everybody, but also like one diet for you throughout your whole life may shift in what helps you feel your best and have your most balanced hormones.
I just made a
Exactly.
reel about that yesterday. About
Did you?
like, I did, yeah. I made a reel. It's that song like, when you're done with your ex, move on to the next. When you're
Oh,
done with your ex,
yeah.
the only ex I want is extra money. Anyway, yeah, because I am like, the way you're eating and moving on all of that, it likely served you for a time. And it really did help with whatever it was that you were going through. Or you really enjoyed it, or it fit your schedule, or like there's some reason why you're doing what you're doing. It worked for a time. And people are so afraid of being wrong these days, because if you say one wrong thing online, people rejoice way more in telling you you're wrong than seeing that you're right. Like probably the easiest way to get a right answer online is post the wrong one, and you'll have people flooding to the comments to tell you how you're wrong. And so it's so like, oh my gosh, I can't be wrong. So don't label it as like wrong.
like, oh, this is wrong for my diabetes. No, it served you for a time, and now you have to move on to the next thing. Just like I used to be able to like eat Taco Bell and then run a track meet. If I ate Taco Bell today, I would need to wear a diaper. Like, there's no way I could exercise after such a meal. I would be so sick. That was fine for me at age 16, but now I need something different. And it doesn't mean that, okay, I would say it's probably wrong to eat Taco Bell for a track meet. Okay, I will claim that. But I was, paleo, gluten free for a while, and it really served me and helped with a lot of things. And I learned more about my body and what I needed, and my needs changed, and it was time to change. It doesn't mean you were wrong. It means that what you're doing just isn't working for your current situation. So maybe you've been keto, carnivore, vegan, whole 30, like, dude, whatever, I don't know. And it probably did help, probably did have less gas and bloating or more energy or better sleep or whatever it was that you were looking for, helped you fit into your cousin's bridesmaid's dress or what all. But now your situation has changed and it's time to change. You weren't wrong or bad or stupid. This is just time. That was a stepping stone. It took you this far. And here on this podcast, Food Freedom Fertility Today, girl, we're taking you another step further.
Hey, Food Freedom and Fertility family. It's Sophia introducing Fertility Cloud. High treatment costs can be daunting, but here's some good news. 80% of Fertility Cloud patients have gotten pregnant for under $2,000 after just 5 months of treatment. Starting your family doesn't need to come with a huge price tag. Fertility Cloud virtual consultations mean you can talk to them from the comfort of your couch. They create personalized plans for men and women, whether it's ovarian stimulation with Clomid or Letrozole, Ovidrel trigger shots, guidance on male fertility, or even weight management support with medication. As a special for Food Freedom and Fertility listeners, get $50 off your initial medical doctor consultation. With meds delivered in just a day or two, unlimited support for your questions, and free follow-ups when needed, they're here to make your path to parenthood smoother and more affordable. Ready to start? Visit myfertilitycloud.com and enter Food Freedom, one word, at checkout.
Okay, so let's shift our focus a little bit and move specifically into this preconception period. If somebody has prediabetes or a diabetes diagnosis, what specifically can they consider or things that they should need to know that might be a little bit different that this condition is impacting their fertility in some way?
Yeah, so if somebody does have diabetes or prediabetes and, they're trying to conceive, they definitely want to be a little bit more observant of where their blood sugars are at, because what we do know with diabetes and prediabetes is they have this thing called insulin resistance, which essentially means that the body's not able to uptake glucose properly, sugar that we get from like carbohydrates and food, and utilize it as energy. And that can lead to menstrual irregularities. It could lead to an imbalance of our hormones, a lot of our hormones that are really important for conception, like LH, FSH, progesterone, insulin, and estrogen. So we really want to make sure that we're paying a bit more attention to all the different factors that can help with promoting our blood sugar to make it more balanced throughout the day.
So we talk about insulin resistance a lot on this podcast.
Mhm.
And I think in some ways our audience may be like a little bit more clued into its impact on things like how insulin can change how much testosterone the ovaries make, or how there's kind of like this feedback system between the brain and the signaling of LH and FSH, and how higher levels of insulin can really impact that. But when you're saying we need to maybe pay closer attention to our blood sugar levels, is that typically with people that are already regularly testing their blood sugar or using something like a CGM? Is this a step that you would recommend to people that are in this preconception phase?
Well, if they're in that preconception phase and they are trying to conceive, and they have insulin resistance in the sense where they have prediabetes, they don't necessarily need to be on a CGM at that moment, but they do need to just focus a little bit more on some of the factors that can help with stabilizing our blood sugar levels. So I really like to ask my clients, like, what does a day-to-day look like? Are you skipping meals? What do your meals look like? Are you getting that balance of protein, fiber, healthy fats, get incorporating those like slow burning carbs? Are you being physically active? And that could even look like just like getting some more walking and movement in. If they're in that stage where their A1C is a bit higher, because with preconception, we really want to keep our A1C ideally close to about 6.5%, sometimes 7%, and below. So 6.5 is like the official diagnosis for diabetes. And then anything below 7 is like what they would consider, like for the American Diabetes Association or the American College of Obstruct. I can never say that properly.
Obstetrics and
Obstetrics.
Or
gynecology.
the American College of
ACOG.
Yeah, ACOG. Would be what they would consider like well controlled and safe for pregnancy. So just trying to keep that good glycemic control to improve fertility outcomes, and then just reduce any pregnancy risks as well once they have officially, started to enter that stage of pregnancy.
Yeah, absolutely. So we honestly don't talk about A1C that much on this podcast. We very much focus on kind of like the food piece, and we even often recommend, because many of the people that we treat may not be in this like actually diabetic or pre-diabetic stage, but do know they have insulin resistance. We often look at a HOMA IR score and look at fasting glucose and insulin and kind of track that as an indicator over time. So maybe we could like pull back the curtain just a little bit on what would a normal A1C be. So like define what A1C is, what we're looking at, and what our goals would be. Because I obviously we could answer this question, but just
Yeah,
so
just
that
sort of
somebody
what it
listening,
is.
Yeah.
yeah,
A refresher of like what is glycogenated hemoglobin.
Yeah, so our A1C, that is an average of our blood sugar, usually over the course of 3 months. So when we're testing that, I think sometimes that's a little bit better to look at from a big picture perspective, because when we're just looking at fasting glucose in the morning, that's just, what your blood sugar was at in that morning upon waking up. Whereas when you're looking at your average over the course of 3 months, you can kind of see overall like where your numbers are at. And it's not perfect because it doesn't account for if people are having like low blood sugar. It doesn't, indicate people can have a normal A1C and, they can test their insulin resistance and get that HOMA IR score and notice that there is some underlying insulin resistance going on before then. But when you do go to the doctor to get your annual physical, or you're going, before you're trying to conceive, they'll test that in there. And when we're looking at normal ranges, anything below 5.7 is considered to be not in that prediabetes range. And so that doesn't mean that there's no insulin resistance going on, but that means that you're in a good number for trying to conceive. And there's very, very low risk of pregnancy complications that are related to blood sugar. Once you are in that 6.5 range or above, then that would be considered diabetes. So 5.7 to 6.4 is that pre-diabetes range. And then 6.5 and above is considered diabetes. And then once we're thinking about like diabetes related complications, that's where we try to keep it below 7%. And then even for people that are trying to conceive, that are utilizing something like IVF, they might be even stricter and try to keep it closer to that 6.5 range and below. The one thing is when trying to conceive, a lot of these medications that people sometimes take to help with lowering their blood sugar, like metformin or any of the semaglutides, they are not technically considered safe once you are having your baby. So a lot of times we or doctors will start to,
Once you're having your baby or once you're pregnant?
Once you're pregnant.
Okay.
Yeah. So there are a lot of those medications like metformin or the semaglutides or Trulicity or any of those are not technically considered safe once you're pregnant. So they'll stop that pretty early on, and really focus in on insulin, because at the end of the day, insulin is considered it's a hormone that our body naturally produces, so it is the safest for pregnancy, and sometimes they just need that extra tool in the toolbox to help them keep those numbers within range and to keep their blood sugar more tightly regulated.
Yeah, it's always a hard thing when you start managing, a condition like diabetes, because there's kind of like a risk versus reward decision that you need to make with your doctor about some of these decisions, because we know that the guidance right now for semaglutide is not only come off it if you're pregnant, but
Before.
come off it ideally like 90 days before
Mhm.
you even start trying to conceive. Um, I've had clients who've come to me like, I'm pregnant now, what type of an appointment? It's like, oh, I was on semaglutide and then we finally conceived. And that makes sense in a lot of cases because the semaglutide is helping with the insulin resistance that is impacting your PCOS fertility. Um, and the right response there is to then go off of this medication and switch over to other safer ways to help manage insulin resistance in pregnancy. So I just want everybody to hear the recommendation is to have a good 90-day washout period at least before you conceive optimally. Sometimes things like that scenario I just mentioned happen. And you may have a doctor that discusses with you that they want you to stay on metformin while you're pregnant, because again, we have like a risk versus a reward scenario where having uncontrolled blood sugar is more of a concern in that doctor's opinion for you and the health of your pregnancy than having the medication on board. As with anything, I think it's important that we always are talking about benefits, risks, alternatives. What if we do nothing? There are alternatives in a scenario where you don't have diabetes that can help with blood sugar management and insulin resistance in pregnancy, like myo-inositol, which may not have negative ramifications like metformin on liver health, et cetera. But those are the kind of things where it can be really helpful to work with a Nikki or a Caitlin or a Sophia, as well as your OBGYN or your midwife or your reproductive endocrinologist, to talk about all of those things, because sometimes the doctors aren't as hip to the recent research on something like myo-inositol, or they're not in the weeds of metformin and what newer studies show with it in pregnancy, et cetera. So I just want people to hear that some of you are going to be told to stay on your metformin, and that might be the right decision for you. If you have diabetes, we know that there is some level of dysfunction in your body's ability to manage your blood sugar on its own. And so what Nikki's saying is, in a scenario of diabetes, right, we may need to focus more on actual insulin itself as a treatment
Mhm.
versus some of these medications that help improve like insulin sensitivity, or um, how your body releases glucose to slow that down so that we're not contributing to higher levels of blood sugar. So can you like zoom into that a little bit more, Nikki, and kind of expound on what you just said, maybe in the context of what you know about what I just said? I don't know how to ask that question better, but maybe
um,
add to that.
yeah. So you're definitely correct on that. I think I when thinking about those different medications, like, it is again very personalized, and some people do tend to stay on certain medications like metformin throughout pregnancy. But I think one of the biggest things is just like removing a little bit of the stigma around insulin as well, because people tend to think of it as this idea of like, okay, well, once I'm on insulin, then I kind of failed, or insulin can lead to like weight gain. And, at the end of the day, the primary focus is to support a healthy pregnancy. I know you just brought up inositol. I love that as a supplement that we can recommend to help for somebody that is trying to conceive and throughout pregnancy. My inositol is used for people, even if they have PCOS and they're not trying to conceive, because it does improve insulin sensitivity and egg quality. And it's oftentimes really safe to use during fertility treatments. Other supplements that are usually recommended, prenatals, we would recommend for somebody with or without diabetes, but we do want to usually start that at least 1 month before conception, usually beyond that, about 3 months or so. And then omega-3. So even through our diet, like I'm a big fan of omegas because they do help with supporting fetal brain and eye development and the anti-inflammatory benefits of those. So we can get a really good quality omega-3 supplement that has DHEA and EPA in there. And then just incorporating, more of our fatty fish, salmon, wild caught, and then incorporating, chia seeds, flax seeds, walnuts, some of our other omega-3s that might not be the EPA DHA side of omegas. Vitamin D, I also am a big fan. A lot of people with diabetes are deficient in vitamin D. And when we're getting our labs done, sometimes we'll see that anything less than 30 is considered in the normal range. But even I would say like 50 and or greater than 50 for vitamin D
Do
level.
you mean anything more than 30 in the normal range?
Sorry, yes.
Yeah. So 30, yeah, 30
Any,
to 100 would be normal, but
yes,
we wouldn't necessarily call that optimal.
yes, exactly. So
Yes.
for vitamin
You're
D,
probably not going to get rickets, but you aren't in a good place to grow a baby's bones. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. So anything greater than 30 is considered normal. But I would say, closer to that 50 and above range would be considered optimal for somebody when they're trying to conceive. And then CoQ10 is another really good antioxidant that I sometimes recommend for clients that can help support egg quality, especially in women that might be over 35 with diabetes. And that usually is safe for during preconception, but sometimes stop once they are pregnant.
So a lot of people that we work with do struggle with insulin resistance, or just, I mean, Soph and I are advocates on learning about blood sugar balance, whether you have insulin resistance or not, because it's so beneficial for the body to not get into an overly stressed out state with high levels of blood sugar and roller coasting down. And anyway, I won't go off on a tangent there, but I kind of want to reel it in to a sense, because I find this with my clients who end up getting pregnant and then end up with a gestational diabetes diagnosis. And I don't want to focus on gestational diabetes, but this is the context where this comes up at times, because they may not be diabetic going into pregnancy. So this is kind of a new state for their body, a new thing that they're managing. And the stakes feel really high. I'm pregnant and now I have these really high blood sugars that I can't seem to control with my diet and lifestyle alone anymore. And I often see this like fight against, I don't want to have to use insulin. I don't want to have to use insulin. And insulin to them, for whatever reason, maybe it's cultural, maybe it's just fighting so hard to get pregnant, fighting so hard to manage their health. All of a sudden, this feels like a failure. I have to use this to help balance my blood sugar. And I just really feel like I didn't do enough. I want to kind of reflect that into the preconception period. And you talked about how managing blood sugar is so important, and getting your A1C within a specific range is ideal. So we're talking about blood sugar over time and getting it to an ideal rate. Somebody with diabetes may need insulin to do that, right?
Mhm.
And so let's talk about how you might reframe that with a client or discuss it with a client so that we're reaching for a goal, and not being so tied to exactly how we get there. Because at the end of the day, in this scenario I'm talking about, your blood sugar being managed in pregnancy is really important for you and your baby. and can impact things like complications in the pregnancy and baby's lifelong chances of developing things like diabetes. Like, we are talking about really big and high stakes. In the context of you getting pregnant, that's also a really big and high stake. Like, we want you to achieve pregnancy. We want to lower your risk of miscarriage. We want you to have a healthy pregnancy. And for some of us, that might mean insulin's a part of this story, and it's not just the insulin your body's making.
Yeah, totally. And I think, again, just like emphasizing that being on insulin doesn't mean that you failed. It means that like you and your care team, again, whether it's your OBGYN, your dietitian, your certified diabetes educator, they're prioritizing a healthy and well-supported pregnancy. I think like insulin, it is a powerful tool. It's not a punishment. And also emphasizing that like gestational diabetes or diabetes, it's not your fault. Gestational diabetes is caused by hormonal changes. So it's not that you did anything wrong. But what we do know is that during pregnancy, our hormones are changing quite a lot. And so the placenta produces certain hormones that help the baby grow. And these same hormones sometimes just make it harder for the body to use insulin effectively. So the pancreas, for most people, when they don't have gestational diabetes, it can keep up by producing more insulin, but at times it might not. And so when the body just can't make extra insulin to overcome that resistance, that's where gestational diabetes can develop. And it's not caused by eating too much sugar or by not exercising. It's just how your body's responding to pregnancy hormones. And so many factors can play a role. Genetics can play a role, family history, um, history of PCOS, age, like all of these that can be outside of your control. And so just looking at it from the bigger picture and just knowing it's very treatable. A lot of people can go to have healthy pregnancies, healthy babies. And the goal is to lower risk of complications and supporting your baby's long-term health. And I think you mentioned this earlier too. Just because you have gestational diabetes once doesn't mean that you're going to get it every time, you have a baby. So it can mean that I've seen this too. Like I've had a client that had gestational diabetes. She was on a stricter diet during that time and just, using insulin. And then afterwards, she kind of just learned a lot more about what it looks like to balance your blood sugar through food and just to eat more regularly, to incorporate protein into your diet, to incorporate more color into your diet. And when she was trying to conceive the second time, she did not get gestational diabetes. And I think just from learning a little bit more about her own body and how her body worked, she was able to go through her second pregnancy without having gestational diabetes and without having to use insulin.
Hey, friends, we're taking a break from this episode so I can share with you a little more about one of our sponsors, Fullwell. Fullwell's a reproductive health company offering superior nutritional supplements that are made without compromise to support women and men throughout their reproductive journey. I have taken Fullwell's prenatals, their fish oil, and have literally tried every product they've released, and I stand behind this recommendation with my whole heart. One of my favorite things to recommend to clients is their Fertility Trio. This includes their egg and sperm quality supplement, their women's prenatal, and fish oil. This helps proactively support you getting ready to conceive. This trio includes things like CoQ10, ashwagandha, and NAC. It makes me think of a life vest. You don't want to go into pregnancy without these foundational supports. And if you've been struggling while trying to conceive, this is the time to upgrade your prenatal fertility game and check out Fullwell. Use code FFF20 today to get 20% off your first order. So, can you reflect that back to kind of like the preconception period and what you see in clients? Like, if there's a goal of let's try and get your A1C under 6.5, what could that look like for someone?
Yeah. So that would definitely, like, for somebody that if their A1C right now is above 6.5, I am a big fan of using CGMs if it works for them and if they don't have a history of disordered eating or restrictive behaviors, because I do think we can get a lot more information through that and really see, how their body best operates to help get their numbers within that more tight range. So a lot of my clients are using a CGM, and they're incorporating more balanced meals. Like, I think seeing from the bigger picture, if somebody might benefit from having, lower carb for breakfast, if they're noticing their blood sugars are a bit higher during breakfast. And then for lunch, what can we do if we're noticing there are always some spikes around lunchtime, getting in like a 10-minute walk after meals, and just kind of seeing overall, like, what are the little things we can do without making it feel so stressful? Because during this time already, like, trying to conceive is a very stressful time in somebody's life. Um, and right now, also looking at the medications that the person is on too. So we did talk again about insulin, and if somebody was on, metformin and Trulicity and maybe a basal insulin, and they're trying to conceive and their doctor is trying to take them off of Trulicity and metformin, they might implement um, a meal-based insulin, like a or a fast-acting insulin that they want to have after their meals to help keep their blood sugars a little bit more stable after their meals. Because once they get off of the other medications, there is going to be that risk of their blood sugars going back higher, just because their body's still not able to produce insulin as effectively.
Just for the people that are listening to this and heard what you say, that insulin is not a punishment, it's a tool, and that you didn't cause this. But then they hear at the same time, I didn't cause this, yet when someone changed their way they eat and move, somehow now they don't have diabetes again in the next pregnancy. I can see how someone would feel like, okay, but doesn't that mean that because I wasn't doing these things, I did cause this? And I guess I want to bring as someone who's having to like use medications right now myself in order to try to get pregnant. It's all right to feel bad that you have to use this medicine. You didn't want this. You wanted to get pregnant easily like everyone else. You didn't want to have to use insulin. You didn't want to have to go to these doctor's appointments. You don't want to have diabetes. And it's a bummer that you're here and you have to do this. And you have to talk about risks and benefits and, potentially risk your baby's long-term health for the sake of you needing this medication because of whether it's your lifestyle choices or your education or your genetics, whatever got you here, you're here. And it's all right to feel bummed about that. It's not your fault, but it is your problem. And ain't nobody going to fix it but you and us, because we're here to help you with that too. But I just want to say it's all right to not be like, oh, good, insulin, I'm so glad. Like, you can feel bad about this and then pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and say, all right, then, well, here we go. And it doesn't mean that what you've done so far was a failure. It means that the tools you had took you this far, and now it's time for new tools because you're not going to be able to go further doing the same thing that you've been doing. And it also doesn't mean once you start these medications, oh, well, diet and exercise don't matter. Furthest thing from the truth. It means now with these medications on board, the diet and exercise can work because you've likely been doing it and it hasn't been taking you as far as you need to go. So it's not like, okay, now I'm on insulin, bring on the cupcakes. No, it's I'm going to continue with my high fiber, high protein, low carb diet. And I'm also going to use this medication so that the things that I've been doing can work. And I don't know. I maybe am like sort of sensitive to this right now because I'm in a place in my fertility journey where I'm staring down the barrel of medications that come with a risk pattern longer than a CVS receipt. But it's all right to be bummed that this is where you are. And then to also say, okay, well, I'm going to play the hand I'm dealt and I'm going to keep going. What I did took me this far and I need to go further, so I need more help.
Mhm. Like, hear us now. You are at the top whatever percent of whatever group you're in because you're even listening to this podcast, right? Like, you're arming
Girl,
yourself
amen.
with free education, you're arming yourself with education from people that actually read research. Like, Nikki research workshop on this and has actual research articles pulled up so that she can make sure we're saying the things not only that we see in practice, but what we've proven with science. We, as a big general sense of, the researchers and the science driven and science practicing folks in a practitioner relationship. So just because you can kind of pick yourself up by your bootstraps and say, I got to take this next step forward, I want you to be encouraged that like you're getting good information and there's things that you can do. And using a medication is a powerful tool and doesn't equal failure. It also is one of those tools in the toolbox, like Sophia just said. Like implementing it doesn't negate the other tools that will take you very far. Like I was writing some content earlier, and one of the things I brought up was the fact that sleep, stress, movement, and food choices. How many of those things are you impacted by every single day? All of them. Your stress impacts your hormones every day. You sleep, hopefully, every day. You eat multiple times a day. You have a choice to move or not move within your day. You could think of that as like one big exercise thing, but you could also think about that as where you park when you go to the grocery store. When I go to these medical appointments with my dad, I always take the stairs. I'm sneaking in those little movement moments, those snacks, and making those choices over and over and over again. And that can feel really heavy. It can feel like, oh my gosh, there's so much I have to do. Or you could stop for a second, take a deep breath, and think about how freeing that is. You have a lot of control and many, many, many opportunities to impact your insulin resistance, your blood sugar levels, and your overall health preconception, during pregnancy, and afterwards every single day. Every single day, you can make small shifts intentionally and maintain those and add up to big changes and big impacts on your fertility and health. And that is incredible because it isn't out of your abilities in terms of your finances. It can be applied whether you have access to a gym or not. Everybody's got outside to go walk in, right? Like you don't even need outside. You could do some squats and some push-ups right now.
I don't
There
know about that. We're coming up on 120-degree season in Arizona right now.
but people do it just like
They
people
do,
run in blizzards.
after the sun sets, before the sun rises. And
Yeah.
your point is just totally, you're 100% right on. I just think
You
of
you
people that
don't
are going
need
to
to
be
buy the
like,
bougie you don't need to buy the
no.
bougie supplements. You don't
Mm-mm.
need to spend a gazillion dollars with a personal trainer. There are
Yeah,
things
we
that
should
you
have like a
can do.
de-influencing episode where we're like,
You
instead
want
of
me to
buying this
do that?
grounding mat, you can go stand in your yard.
Go put your feet in the
I'm a
grass.
big proponent of
Yeah.
like photosynthesizing in the sun. Like I just love to just like sit
Yes.
there with the sun on my face, and I'm like, that is a way to help with stress management. And it's $0.
Yeah, like dude, you've got cinnamon in your cabinet right now. Go sprinkle it on the next thing you eat. You've just improved your blood sugar. Like there are things that we can do that are not these big, heavy, scary things.
Yeah. And I love that you talked about just like incorporated the sleep and the stress management piece, because I think that is also such a big part of it all. And like we mentioned, stress, this is just a stressful time in somebody's life in general. And so really focusing in on that and like what we can do to support them, what you could do to support yourself during this time. Like you don't need to go out and get every single like fertility testing kit online. You don't need to be going out and buying all the supplements. You don't need to be going out and like doing every diet under the sun. Like, it's really about just like taking a few deep breaths and kind of figuring out like what you could do emotionally and mentally to support yourself during this time as well.
What are things somebody with diabetes might wonder about or be surprised about when it comes to getting pregnant? Like, did you come across anything when you were prepping for this episode or just day to day in your practice that you're like, this always surprises someone?
Yeah, I think one thing that have noticed that people with diabetes come across is that they're not really taught about how their diabetes can impact their fertility, and they're not really like educated on that in general. Unless they're in that state where there might be not necessarily well controlled diabetes, then the doctor might bring it up. But they just kind of go into that stage of life of trying to conceive, and they don't really have much information on that until they come to work with a registered dietitian, and they're taught like, you know, maybe we need to think about this a little bit more, and like what how your diabetes can be impacting your fertility, especially if they've been trying for a really long time and they haven't noticed any success within that too. And they're not really looking at their diabetes and their blood sugar levels as something that can be impacting their fertility as well.
One thing you mentioned when we started recording was that it's important to you in your practice and diabetes digital that or digital diabetes.
Diabetes
What
digital.
way do you say it? Diabetes
Yeah.
digital. Um, is like being accessible, accepting insurance, but also culturally sensitive and helping people navigate traditional foods. I think of this a lot too, even just beyond culturally sensitive, but like skill set sensitive. What do you know how to do in the kitchen? What skills did your grandma or your mom or you picked up from a roommate? Like, what do you know how to do? Where are there gaps that we can help you? Also, financially, like we have limitations in our food budgets or what stores we go to. When I work with somebody, I'm used to living near a Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, Costco, grocery outlet, Aldi's, but I work with people that are very rural who have Walmart or like not even a store like that. Um, so I like to think about like, again, we're trying to do individualized care and be sensitive to you as a patient, as a person with all of these things, including food preferences and tastes that you want to continue incorporating. I've worked with a heavily Hispanic, like focused practice before, especially when I used to live in California. I had a lot of immigrant and migrant, like temporarily migrant workers that would come up and pick the strawberries where I live, and then they would be gone. But when they were there, I was who they got sent to. And when I think about those cultures, the food that's cheap and that they're used to eating are things like rice and beans. They eat a lot of tortillas, um, a lot of cactus. Like there were foods that came up over and over and over again. And I kind of developed a way to talk about these things and navigate like how we build our plate around foods. But I'd love to hear how maybe you could pick out a couple different cultural settings that you have tried to embrace those traditional foods, but also help people learn to manage their diabetes better because, we know if you don't make changes, we're not going to see changes. And so just because we're sensitive to these cultures and traditional foods, we also want to teach you and equip you to navigate those situations as best you can.
Totally. And so there also has been some research that has shared that people are better able to tolerate a lot of their cultural foods as well, which is really cool. Like, they might not have the same glycemic response as somebody else. But one thing that we also like to talk about too, because I also work with a lot of Hispanics, and white rice is like demonized a lot when you're looking at it from like a very Eurocentric lens. And when we try to compare like white rice versus brown rice, there's really not that big of a difference between the two.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people just really love their white rice. And I'm also Persian, and I come from a very like rice heavy culture as well. And if somebody were to tell my mom to make some brown rice, like she would literally like laugh in your face because it just does not taste the same. So just kind of looking at that and noticing, what's the biggest difference? Okay, like brown rice might have a bit more fiber in it than white rice. So what are some things that we can incorporate if we want to have some of our white rice that has some fiber in it? For somebody with a Hispanic background, like beans also have a ton of fiber in that as well. It does have some carbs. So we want to be mindful of our portion sizes, like looking at that kind of like my plate picture of having about like a quarter of our plate being whatever starch we want, whether it's rice, whether it's naan, whether it's, some sort of pasta that people had growing up. And then seeing what other high fiber foods we can incorporate too, whether it's certain veggies from their culture. I'm a big proponent of having like a really simple salad that's literally just like leafy green and maybe like one or two cut up veggies with some like vinegar and olive oil. We've seen having like high fiber foods before you have your meal can really help with regulating blood sugar too. So just even being like, have your food, have a little side salad before that takes like 3 seconds. You don't have to chop up anything, and then put some vinegar on that. And that can also help there too. So just kind of like finding little tips and tricks. And I think you mentioned earlier, like little snacks that you can help people understand a little bit more behind that as well. Um, and knowing that it's not that they can't have their food at all, but what else does their plate consist of? Noticing like, are you having an entire plate full of rice or an entire plate full of whatever starch that comes from your culture, whether it's like rice and
Yeah,
plantains.
using your naan to scoop up the rice.
Yeah, exactly. Like, love that. Delicious, but it just might not be the best option for you if you are dealing with insulin resistance. So thinking about like, does my plate also have some good protein on there as well? Like having at least a quarter plate protein, and then really emphasizing vegetables like our non-starchy vegetables to really help support us too.
We are going to take a break from this episode and chat a little bit about one of our sponsors. Truth be told, when we were contacted by Fond to see if they could sponsor our Food Freedom Fertility podcast, it kind of was like one of those dream come true sponsorships. Let me explain why. There are very few foundational foods that cover broad nutrient needs for fertility, gut health, and baby's brain development like Fond is. And not only do they create these foundational foods, they kind of exceed in every category that I can think of what we want to put into our bodies. They're the only verified regenerative through land to market bone broth, tallow, and lard on the market. Unparalleled animal sourcing, all pasture raised or 100% grass fed and finished cattle. All the herbs and vegetables that are in the blends and the seasonings of these broths and lard are exclusively organic. Nothing is packaged in plastic. The entire packaging process is plastic free from kitchen to their shipping materials. When I think about this regenerative fat line that they've just introduced to the market, I use it in so many different ways. I've used their pork lard that's flavored with cinnamon and vanilla when I've been sauteing apples to put in my children's oatmeal. I've used their regenerative beef tallow that's flavored with chili and garlic as I've sauteed meat that's going to go into a slow cooked pho style dish. And then I've used their broth within that dish itself. I love the flavor combinations. I love that I can trust that these foods that I'm putting in my body are so clean but truly delicious. The infused flavors are ready to sip, and all the fun flavors can be used to take any dish from good to gourmet. I've been using these for the last 4 or 5 months every single day and have seen a huge difference in my own health. And I know this is our fertility podcast, but we started taking on Fond as a sponsor at the same exact time that my dad got diagnosed with esophageal cancer. And I had so much peace in these moments where he could hardly eat anything, that he was sipping on a bone broth that had so much gelatin and collagen and amino acids, that I knew we were reducing inflammation in his body and giving him just these beautiful, naturally occurring electrolytes and protein that was so easy to get down. This is one of my most favorite products I've ever used in my kitchen, and I am so proud that we get to partner with Fond. Fond has generously given us a coupon code for their website where you can receive 10% off. So that's FFF10. Or if you click on the link in our show notes, it actually brings you to a landing page where the discount is baked right in, and some of Sophia's and my favorite products are hanging out on that page for you to peruse. Please give this brand a try. Please support them. If you haven't listened to our episode, you are just gonna scream at how incredible this brand is and what they've come through, supporting a woman-founded business that has your health and our planet's best interest at heart. It's something that I can't be more proud that we get to partner with, and they sponsor you getting this free fertility information straight to your phone every single week. Now back to our episode.
Yeah, what would be your big takeaway, Nikki, for anybody listening to this who is dealing with that diabetes diagnosis and is like, boy, what does this mean for me? Because I really want to become a mom.
Mhm.
I really want to have a baby or have another baby.
I think one of the biggest things I want to emphasize is just because you have diabetes, that doesn't mean that you are not going to be a mom or have a baby. You can totally have a healthy pregnancy, and you can totally get pregnant with diabetes. It is not this like diagnosis that means that it's going to completely affect your quality of life and your ability to have a baby. There's just some things that you need to be a little bit more careful about or observant about, and really like thinking about all the different tools in your toolbox that you want to um, focus on. So it's not just about food. It's about food is one part, one piece of the puzzle, but it is about taking care of yourself, managing your stress, getting enough sleep, um, leaning into your support system, whether that's your family, friends, your care team, your diabetes care team, and then just meeting yourself where you're at. You don't have to have a fancy plate of organic food, like for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's just like finding what works for you and really leaning into that, because at the end of the day, diabetes burnout can be real, and we really want to emphasize like what are some sustainable changes we can make to overall improve our health and just live a more balanced lifestyle.
Yeah, it's not the days of steel magnolias anymore.
Yeah.
You don't have to not have babies because you have diabetes.
Yeah.
Are you too young for steel magnolias as well, or do you know what I'm talking about?
I am too young.
It's another classic. Sally Field, Julia Roberts, Dolly Parton.
Ooh, see, I'm just not.
Tonight,
I
Nikki, go
know.
watch Steel Magnolias.
I have this thing where like if somebody were to tell me about a movie, I'm like, I might have even seen the movie, but I just like don't even remember until I like got 15 minutes into the movie. I'm like, oh, I've already seen this.
Oh, you're
before.
me.
Is that something
You're
you
me.
do too?
Sophie can remember every line and every
No.
person and everything she's ever seen. And I'm like, huh. I just read this meme the other day that was like, me after reading a book, like the first week after reading the book, I can tell you the plot, I can tell you the characters, I can write a book report. It like 2 weeks after the book, don't remember the major plot lines. 3 weeks after the book, can't remember the book's name. I'm like, that is
No,
me.
literally, I have book club this weekend, and I purposely still have like a few hundred pages to read because I'm like, I need to do it like
Otherwise
right
you
before.
wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Caitlin's got me reading this book about ADHD, and I am like, yep, this is me. Like movie quotes, things you said, joke you made when you were 14, freaking steel trap. Task list of what needs to be done for this podcast by next week. Listen intently, write it down, put it in my calendar. Whoosh, walk out of the room, it's gone forever. And not until I meet with you again does it come into my mind as something that's valuable.
What is this?
Why do I remember every single thing that happened at summer camp when I was 12? I don't know. I just do. Why can't I remember the task that I'm supposed to do after this podcast? Because my brain won't. It won't do that.
It doesn't.
It values information like song lyrics and not actual things that need to get done for the people I love.
I mean,
All
Or
right.
the well-being of my business.
We are moving into our Yeah Girl segment. Nikki, thanks for being here. Thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for sharing information. This segment is what we do to celebrate happy things in life that happened or things we're excited about. Because sometimes things are heavy that we talk about. So we're going to go around the table and everybody say something that the other people would say, yeah, girl, to. And right before we do that, I would love for you to give a shout out to Diabetes Digital or ways people can find you or this company and how they can work with you.
Yes. So you can find us on diabetesdigital.co if you just want to go on that website, or we are on Instagram and TikTok on Diabetes Digital. And when you go to diabetesdigital.co, you can fill out a quiz, which will just match you with one of our amazing dietitians. I think there's like almost 10 of us now on the team, which is really awesome to see how much we've grown. And fill out your insurance card. And like I mentioned earlier, about 90% of our clients pay $0 out of pocket. So it's fully covered through insurance. A lot of them have unlimited visits. So you're able to work with a dietitian for as long as you need. And it's just been really awesome to be able to see so many people get access to working with an RD one-on-one.
Cool. Diabetesdigital.co. Hey, friends, we're taking a break from our episode to talk about one of our sponsors. And this sponsor is the PCOS app. Did you know that I made an app all about PCOS? Well, I did, and you can find so many resources in it. We have slowly moved all the resources from my PCOS Hormone Academy course over into the PCOS app, and that talks about all things PCOS topically. Like if you have acne, you can go look at the skin and acne modules and see what does Western medicine offer? Why does this impact PCOS? What can we do about it? What are natural remedies? What are nutritional remedies? We talk about hair loss and hirsutism all through that lens where we go through what is it? Why is it impacted by PCOS? Or why do we need to pay more attention to this particular thing? And what can we do about it? And we provide a vast resource to help you both advocate for yourself at the doctor's office and treat yourself at home naturally. Now, the exciting thing that I want to share with you is starting in January 2025, we're starting to migrate all of the content that I have published so far on fertility into this app. I used to sell a course for $700 all about how to get pregnant with PCOS, and that is all getting moved into the app between January and March. So you can take the course as if you enrolled in the whole thing for $10 per month. So head to your app store, whether you're on a Google Android device or an Apple device. If you type in PCOS app, you just look for that really pretty lavender flower, you'll find it. Download it and join us because you're going to get weekly recipes and all the fertility focused PCOS content that you need. It will start being uploaded under the Academy tab. So stay tuned for that. And let's get back to our episode. All right. Soph, do you want to go first with a yeah, girl?
Yeah, girl. Oh boy. No, my life has been sort of a toilet the past week. Let me think for a second. Let me try to grasp onto one thing that's going well. Okay, here we go. So, the newest saga in Sophia's fibroid ectopic recovery life is that this week I am partnering with a California based clinic called Joy Wellness Partners. I actually used to work there when I first moved to California, San Diego, after I was living in Illinois. And we are starting a new medication to try to shrink this fibroid. I have tried so many other things. Nothing has worked. she perseveres, this fibroid of mine. And so I had an MRI on Sunday to get the size, shape, depth, thickness, girth, whatever you want to say about this fibroid. And on
Girth.
Thursday, I am meeting with a regenerative wellness doctor to begin a medication and supplement protocol that's a little bit wild, a little bit off label, but I am actually going to be using a glucagon-like peptide.
Hmm.
So I'm going to be using tirzepatide in a very small dose for 90 days. And then we are going to scan the fibroid once more and see, did she respond? Yes, no, maybe, a lot, a little, not at all, and decide whether I'm going to continue on this to try to shrink it more, come off of it and try to get pregnant, or what the story's going to be. But I'm having that sort of hopeful, joyful feeling that, like, okay, something might work and we're going to try this thing. So this is my yeah girl, is that I've got a new plan and we're starting it this week.
So cool.
Yeah, girl.
That's exciting. I didn't know that. Yeah, girl.
I'm scared, honestly. But I'm also hopeful.
That's awesome.
I would love to kind of dig into the research a little bit on why she thinks that's a good idea. Not that I'm skeptical.
It's
but
more
just
like an estrogen receptive, like the way that your fat
Mhm.
produces estrogen and the estrogen receptivity of the fibroid and the fatty nature of fibroids in general, to see if this helps.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
It's definitely not a first line thing. We could talk about it in another episode, but it's definitely like after you've tried a lot of things, but I'm looking at either this or ending, closing my family. We have our 2 kids and that's all, or an extremely invasive surgery, which may have to end up being a hysterectomy while we're in there, depending on how it goes, which will
Definitely close
absolutely
your
result
window.
in me having
Mhm.
to wait a full year before having a baby at the minimum, maybe doing it and still not ever be able to have a baby, have to have a C-section if I do get pregnant again, or going on Lupron, which is like basically putting my body in menopause. So at this point, with all the treatments I've done and all the things I've been doing, it's either try this, do nothing, or have this extremely invasive, risky stuff. So we're trying this.
I know. Such a great example of benefits, risks, alternatives. What if I do nothing? It's like that's
And I
your
would be lying if I said I'm not just freaking curious about using these GLP-1s. I'm just
Mhm.
curious, honestly. The
Mhm.
human experiment. I just want to experience it, I guess.
Interesting. All right, Nikki, do you have something to celebrate?
That was just like such a good celebration. Like it was so great to hear that you're on this journey and you found something that hopefully, fingers crossed, can work for you. Something I would like to celebrate is just, I think, um, this stage of life, I would say, like, just, I know this year has been like very mentally, emotionally, physically is exhausting for a lot of people. And so I think for for me, I would say I'm in finally in a place where I feel really like comfortable with a lot of the, with my career and with my family. I've been, spending a lot more quality time with my family. I have my dog, which I'm obsessed with, which I wish I will send you guys a photo of him a little bit later. He is so,
Hold them up.
oh my gosh, he's sleeping. Hold on.
Oh, oh, that face.
Yeah.
My goodness. What's his name or her name?
His name is, so do you guys know Gossip Girl?
Mhm.
So his name is Nathaniel
I'm
Archibald.
too old for that, I fear.
I don't know it well, but I know
His
it.
name is Nathaniel Archibald.
I've heard of it.
He goes by Archie.
Oh.
Yeah, he's very cute. And yeah, I think I just really want to celebrate all my clients, honestly. Like, I just love working with them so much. And I think seeing them and the progress that they've made and just like the little wins that I get to celebrate on a day to day basis have just been really, really rewarding. And so it just makes me really grateful to be in this space as a dietitian, because I don't know about you guys, but I've gone through the ups and downs of like, I don't want to work in a hospital, so I don't know what I'm doing or why I want to be a dietitian. And it's been really cool to finally be in a place and working with a company that I just like love and really value.
Yeah, that's awesome. Sophia and
Wonderful.
I totally get
Yeah.
that because neither of us work in the hospitals. Nor I think did we ever really want to. So we
I
totally
thought I
see.
did for a while there before I actually did it. And then I was like, oh no,
Oh yeah, no. Thank you.
this is not for me.
I'm gonna do a yeah girl. Well, yeah girl, Nikki. I will say
Yeah, girl, to you.
I do a lot of precepting, and one of my biggest take homes that I try to like push into these future dietitians is like, please find an aspect of dietetics that you love. Please do not suffer in the basement of a hospital handing out like insures. Like, that's why you got your master's degree.
Making
Just,
$36 an hour.
It's
Yeah.
yeah,
with
like,
no windows.
please, well, yeah, spread your wings and find something you love because there's so many people that need your help and you have such an expertise. And what a privilege to be able to walk along people and help them to live healthier lives. I know with me, with my insulin resistance, difference between eating well to nourish my body and not is the difference between having energy and enjoying my day or just wishing I was in bed all day long. And like that key that you can hand people by helping educate them in that is really, really, really powerful. And the fact that you get to hang out in like that / the fertility space a little bit is so cool because helping somebody have a healthy pregnancy or even get to the point of being able to have a kid, literally you've just given them the best gift you could ever give. And I was okay, this is what I'm gonna celebrate. I was at the YMCA last night. My girls are doing gymnastics. And this sweet, cute little pregnant girl was talking to this mom who had a bunch of kids. And she's like, I'm about to go from 2 to 3. Like, do you think I can do it? How many children do you have? And she's like, I have 5. She's like, oh man, 2 to 3, not a big deal. These are the things that were hard. But honestly, the things that make it great are so much better than the things that make it hard. And you so often do not hear that. You hear, oh, you're outnumbered. Oh, you're this. Like, the messaging around motherhood is so negative at times from mothers themselves or from, you walk down the aisle of the store and
Chapel
someone's
Roan.
like, you got your hands full. Yeah. I mean, like, truly, it's everywhere. And it was so beautiful and wonderful because usually that's the kind of thing I'll try to say is I'm like, it's the best. It's hard, but it's the best thing I've ever done. It was so nice to hear somebody else in public say, like, motherhood's the best. Oh, you're going to love having 3. Think about how much fun they're going to have playing in the sandbox in a couple years. They'll have another kid to build like sandcastles with. And I just loved that. So, yeah, girl, to all those people out there trying to add their first or another to the mix because you are embracing motherhood the way it should be embraced, fighting for it.
Amen.
And I hope you love it.
I love that.
Okay. Well, here we are. Another episode of Food Freedom Fertility in the books. Please, if you enjoyed this episode, leave us a rating, review. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss an episode. Go check out Diabetes Digital. If you're interested, it sounds like you could take a quiz and maybe get Nikki, or can they like email and say, I really jived with Nikki and want to work with her? Can they do that?
Yeah, so there's a list of all of our providers on our website, and they can request whichever provider they're looking for. So they can look for me or any of our other dietitians as well.
All right. Well, have a great day, everybody.